Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Deep Drop for another episode. I'm Luke McCredden, and with me, Adam Ring. Ads, the Deep Drop talks a lot of... no, I'm not going to say rubbish, Ads. I'm going to say we just talk a lot of fishing that just is a bit unusual, or is a bit different to what... left of field, left of centre, a bit different to what you might have heard previously in other, I suppose, fishing radio or TV or magazines or whatever. But we often just throw questions at each other. And... we more often than not don't really land on anything, and that's okay. That's okay. We're fence sitters. We're open fence sitters a lot of the time. But every now and then we decide it's time to bring in a third wheel.
Yep.
And I mean that in the utmost respect. And tonight's one of those nights, mate. We caught up with someone who I've great respect for, who I did a recent trip, which I've spoken about on the show and spoken to you millions of times since in Western Australia. Curtis Waterman from Halco Tackle joined the show, Ads, and Jesus Christ, if you and I aren't already packing our bags to move to WA, I'm not sure what you're doing.
Well, look, that was the first time that I had spoken, and I guess over the computer or over Zoom or whatever we're doing, met Curtis. What an exceptional young man to have in the industry. Now, young man, he is young, but for what he's accomplished in our industry to date is insane, and it was great to sit down with him for a little bit, pick his brain on a few things, get a little bit of the backstory, but also explore that unbelievable fishery they have over in Western Australia.
Listen, we go through lots of different stuff in this episode, Ads, and we could have spoken to him for another hour and a half, I reckon, but you're right. Western Australia, I mean, straight up, if you're out there listening and want to get in touch with us on Instagram, please do. Let us know your stories about WA because, gee whiz, I've only had one experience there, and it was with Kurt and the Halco team, and I was blown away. But hearing some of the stuff, you're not going to want to tune out, by the way. This is a bit of a teaser, but hearing some of the stuff that the fisheries and the experiences that Curtis has had, and even just recently in the last few weeks, it's just wild, out of this world. So, but we also get his thoughts on a few really important things, Ads, like boat snacks.
Yep.
What's more important, rod or reel?
Yep. So the important questions.
The real important stuff.
We asked him the hard-hitting questions.
Oh, yeah. We went there.
Yeah.
So there's that too. So tune in to hear all that. But no, you're right. A great young fella who, it's good for our industry to have these younger guys because we're not getting any younger, Ads.
Nope.
I don't want to call you. Well, if I call you old, I'm a year older than you. Or a couple of years
older, I think.
But it's great, and hopefully, there's more people like Curtis getting around, and I can't wait to catch up with him again in a couple of months at the trade show, Ads.
Yeah,
he's
bring
always
it on.
Good value. But listen, sit back and enjoy this one, or if you're cruising to work in your car, or you're on the train, or you're just chilling at home, have a listen. He's a great guy. Check him out on the socials. Jump on our Instagram page and we'll share some stuff from Curtis. You can have a look at some of his awesome photos and what he's been doing, but more importantly, have a listen to Curtis Waterman. What is it, like 5:30 where you are?
Yeah, yep.
And like 2003? Or
It's still a spin.
No, just getting dark.
Just getting dark.
Yeah, the weather's been horrible the last couple of days. But
what does a winter look like? It doesn't get cold, does it? In Perth?
we get the odd real cold day. We get the odd cold like front rolled through that gets pretty cold, but like I say, that weekend's been horrible, but like today was, 26 and sunny for most of the morning. But it got a bit horrible.
What's real cold like? 20?
Yeah.
No, we had a storm come through a couple of days ago that was pretty rough. But it's like that, like horrible stuff will just roll through and then it goes back to 26 and sunny. So.
But what even does it get to? Or what is your version of horrible?
What's cold?
Yeah.
Oh, like heinously cold would be like single digits.
Okay.
7.
Oh yeah,
8.
no, okay, yeah,
that's fair.
That would be heinous. Like at 12, I'm struggling.
So like every morning here, Luke, at the moment.
Yeah.
Well, every morning.
If it was 12 degrees, I'd be like,
no, we're lucky. I mean, we'll get to a point real soon where we're lucky to get 12 as a top, as a maximum.
oh Jesus,
Yeah,
right, yeah, okay.
And we've had it like last week. I think we were on the phone at one point, Ads, and we just had some howling winds here, which made it like
Yeah.
just fucking cut the temperature in half. Like it was just nuts.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it's a different world.
Well, our lowest this week is 12.
Okay, so it's still.
It gets
Oh wait,
pretty
you're
cold.
low.
Yeah, lowest of the whole week. Yeah, our lowest low. So that'll be at 2 a.m. on
It's a weird
Wednesday morning.
Yeah, you'll be up. You'll be still out. Because just want to throw it out there, ads. Kurt's significantly younger than you and I, and don't want to age shame you and I, Adam. I don't feel like we're old. I mean, I feel like I'm old, like physically sometimes. But
I'm hearing you.
But Kurt, firstly, obviously, thank you so much for coming on, man. I've been hanging to get you on the deep drop since we fished together, and the listeners have heard plenty about that trip because I won't shut up about it. Adam's heard even more about it because sometimes I'll just ring him randomly during the day and go, man, you're braless, right?
I thought of something else.
That's gold.
But no, thanks, man. I mean, it's a trip like to speak to you for, sort of, I suppose, in passing over the last year or so, but then to spend a week in close proximity with quite literally nowhere to get away from each other. You soon work out who's a bit of a dickhead, and you're not, my friend. You're a good fella, and I could spend a week on a boat with you anytime. But man, it's it's cool to have you on, and off the back of probably a couple of trips since we last spoke. Where have you been, and what the hell have you been doing?
Yeah, so we had the 2 weeks at the Abrolhos. Obviously, Ben and I were there for a week before you guys joined us to fish competition, and then I think we had, which was great. I was happy to get off the boat after 2 weeks, though. Usually after, and like the boat's unreal, but yeah, 2 weeks is a long time. But then we came back to the office for a little bit, and then we had another filming trip last week with up to Shark Bay, which is a unbelievable spot as well. So Dirk Hartog Island is on the western side there, and there's just there's some pretty cool fishing up that way too. So we got into some good stuff.
They just seem like those real wild joints. Like the only thing I've ever known of Dirk Hartog Island was a episode of Rex Hunt's Fishing Adventures.
I was about to say,
right.
same thing.
Do you remember? You probably remember that, ads. Yeah.
Yep.
And you remember even then thinking, like, it feels otherworldly, like it doesn't.
Away, yeah.
Do you get that sense, or are you kind of used to these sorts of places?
I mean, they still feel pretty unreal. Dirk Hartog, I don't know. I haven't actually spent a lot of time on the island. There's like a homestead and stuff there,
right.
and there's a barge that you can drive your car across on. So it's like a really popular spot for four-wheel drive enthusiasts and that kind of thing, like rather than hardcore fishermen, because it is, it's one of those only like island experiences that you can actually get a four-wheel drive on, so it's pretty unique in that regard, which is pretty cool. And you can drive right up to the top end. It's a big long island, but we, like, because we stay on the boat, we usually hang up sort of around the northern end and on the inside and hang around there. Yeah, it's pretty cool. We're lucky because there's so many of these sorts of places in WA that we get to go to, like Montebello's. That one probably feels even another level of kind of remote. And like, we talked about how unique the Abrolhos is. They're all similar in that kind of regard, but yeah, they've all got their unique things about them too. So yeah, the Shark Bay Zone, I love that area as well. And we haven't been there for a couple of years, but we try and spend a bit of time there.
And when you say we, are these all written off as work trips? Now, just for anyone playing along at home, Curtis having to work for Halco, and I don't know about you, ads, but I don't get to spend as much time in the water doing what I do.
Well, it's interesting because Curtis, hearing you say that back and forth on the boat, and 2 weeks being a long time. I spent about 5 hours on a kayak on Saturday, and that was rough. And when I started, it was 5 degrees, so it was awesome.
I won't complain.
It was awesome, but I couldn't wait to get off the thing. But it's interesting because down here in Victoria, where we're based, there's a few tackle shops around that take groups over to Western Australia, whether that be the Abrolhos or any of the other island chains around there. Is it somewhere that you're seeing there's more and more popularity, or have they always been this popular? It's just, I guess, with a few other areas around the country that are now been put under a little bit of pressure. Like we've seen all the stuff that's happened in South Australia and all that sort of stuff. Is it funneling more people your way, or are we only just figuring out how good it is?
No, I think there's definitely a lot more activity at those sorts of places than there was. I mean, I'm only 25, so I can only speak for the last 10 years since I started doing this sort of stuff. But I went on my first fishing trip to the Mackerel Islands when I was 8. And that's off, which was pretty cool.
Yeah.
So that was in 2006. And I remember because we listened to the Eagles win the premiership over a little transistor radio. There was like 20 of us crowded around it.
Yeah.
Anyway.
No, that was a real cheap shot just to get it West Coast Eagles.
well played.
I'll allow it.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So, that was 06, and that was to Long Island, which is... It's about 30 nautical miles sort of northeast of Exmouth, and it's about 20 sort of southwest from Onslow, and they're sort of the two places you can get to that island from. And it's fairly spread out, but it's technically part of the Mackerel Islands group. But that then was like a big sort of offshore expedition. That was like where we're doing stuff not many people do. You know, throwing your swags and stuff in the boat and going camping on an island for a week.
Yeah, that's cool.
But now, if you went to Long Island now, there'd be 25 trailer boats in the bay.
Oh, really?
So, yeah. So it's like, I think that's also due to just technology getting better. And
for sure.
You know, anyone with a 20-foot boat can, you know, with 300 litres of fuel
it's more range though, yeah, because it's kind of like down here. We've seen it over the last decade where you don't need a 6, 7, 8 meter fiberglass boat anymore. Like there's people getting offshore catching 100 kilo tuna in 4.5 meter tinnies essentially.
Yeah.
But we're also not traveling, 100 nautical mile. Like it's but seeing a few weeks back the distances you travel out to some of these places, that would be the thing I would assume, which would still mean you can't kind of just do it in just a little dinghy with 25 litre jerry can.
Yeah, it's fuel that's the biggest thing. The Abrolhos is an interesting one. The Abrolhos is protected by that bit of water between the islands and Geraldton because it can just get so gnarly. Like I think it's only sort of 30 odd mile at the closest point, which is not too bad. And you could definitely go and do 2 nights on a trailer boat there and come home. But that bit of water is just so gnarly. Like I remember a day we came back from the southern group back to Geraldton, which is where we went to from Geraldton. So we did that trip in reverse.
Right.
And the Simrad screens on Ben's boat are like glassed into the console up the top where he drives. And it was so rough. The fiberglass under the screens had cracked off, and we'd like taped the screens back so they wouldn't fall off the fucking console. Like it was rough. And we're in a 50-foot boat, and the anchor chain, like where you were sleeping, you would have been 3 feet deep in anchor chain. Like it had just poured out the top, busted through the front, poured down. Like it was so rough. And that sort of came out of nowhere a little bit. And I just think if you're in a 21-footer, like, you'd be in serious trouble. So that bit gets so gnarly.
Do people get
sort of protects
stuck?
It.
Like come unstuck, I should say. Like, is it something that does just pop up, or is it predictable? Were you guys just naive and went, we're in a 50-footer?
There's a bit of that, yeah. There definitely was a bit of that.
And was there any point in that trip where you thought we're fucked here?
Yeah. Not so much. It was horrible, but yeah. No, look, it doesn't. People don't come unstuck that often. It does happen, but I think everyone's well aware of how gnarly that bit of ocean is.
Yeah.
Like it's renowned for being windy and swelly and pretty horrible sometimes. So.
To your point before, Ads, about people from here doing sort of trips specifically to some of those places, and it really is. I suppose on the east coast of Australia, you can cover. You could spend a few days and cover 6 different sort of ports and fish some different country and that sort of thing. I reckon that's got to be part of. Like, it's not easy. You're hours and hours in between different towns on that west coast. Am I right? Like, even just driving from Perth to Geraldton's like, 4 hours or something like that?
Yeah.
And then is it similar again to the next? Like, so it's not as if you can go, let's just whip up to the next town and we'll see what's happening.
You saw the busy bit.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Mind you, we took the You would have taken the Brand Highway up, which is like the boring
Inland
one that the
sort of
trucks
thing. Yeah.
take. Yeah, you can drive up the Indian Ocean Drive, which is a nicer drive.
Oh, I heard it's a nicer drive while we were travelling through the middle of nowhere for 4 hours.
It is way nicer. It takes a little bit longer, but you go through like the turn-offs and stuff for the little crayfishing towns and stuff. Like so between the north of Perth and Geraldton, you've got Lancelin, Cervantes, and Jurien Bay, and then Dongra, and then Geraldton. So if you take that coastal road, we would have gone through Dongra, but if you take the coastal road, you go through Lancelin, Cervantes,
Right.
and Jurien Bay as well. So
Yeah.
it's not quite as sparse as it may have seemed from that drive. Mind you, north of Gero, it does start getting a bit drawn
right.
out.
Yeah. I need to because we need to throw back a bit. I mean, you're a young fella, and it blows me away. Like, with all due respect, I think you're in for a world of disappointment if you change careers at this point. Yeah. I mean that in the best possible way.
Yeah.
Fuck, like wicked. Like I know you work your guts out, you work hard at what you do. So I'm not trying to take away from it. But how does a 25-year-old land himself working for one of the, I suppose a household name in lures in Australia and doing what you're doing? Where does that all come from?
It was a bit of right place, right time, I guess, as a lot of things like that are. It is unreal. And like my mates who are now finishing, carpentry apprenticeships and plumbing apprenticeships and have had 1 or 2 years in the workforce hate me really bad now. But no, I started just working in tackle shops as a 14, 15-year-old. I worked at Blue Water Tackle here, which was for a few years, which was really good for me because they were like one of the premium stores in Perth. And
they were a premium store in Australia. Like they were spoken
yeah,
about
they were
over
big
here.
time.
Yeah.
So like, and the wealth and knowledge amongst the guys that
Yeah.
have been there for 10, 15 years was just, for me to walk in as a 15, 16-year-old was unreal. And to have 3 or 4 years to learn off those guys was nuts. But then I started writing for Western Angler magazine when I was about 15 or 16, I think, because my mum actually, she worked in advertising and she was selling the advertising for Western Angler magazine. So I met Scott Coughlin, who's the owner and editor of the mag through mum working there, and just started writing a column. And then, I don't know, just sort of met people in the industry. Ben and Tim and everyone at Halco have been big supporters of Western Angler magazine for a long time. So, and because we're both over here, we'd always bump into each other at boat shows. And I remember working the Mandurah boat show for Western Angler when I was young, and just meeting lots of people. And then in 2015, so I was 17. Then my mum and dad started a program called the Next Gen Fishing Team, which was a group of basically 10 kids from the age of about 12 to 17. I was the oldest, and a bunch of sponsors jumped on board and gave us a bunch of gear, and we had a website and social media stuff and made content and went on fishing trips and would on stage at different boat shows and things like that. And that whole program was basically just put together as like just an opportunity. It was my mum's idea. It was just to provide an opportunity to those kids that loved fishing and were just so involved in it to just
that.
how do you find a pathway into the industry if that's what you want to do as a 12
Is that
or
still
13-year-old.
going?
No, it's not. It probably should be. I mean, Mum and Dad did an amazing job with it, and it's probably the reason that I am where I am now. And I look back at like sort of the 10 or 15 kids that were involved, and one's a marine sparky and sort of went down that path through that, and I think there's 2 fisheries officers. There's probably about 3 fishing guides, and then a bunch of other guys that are still not necessarily working in the industry but still heavily involved and winning comps and stuff. So.
Well,
We spoke about this pretty recently, Ads, on the show, and we were talking about, I feel like the grassroots, I call it grassroots fishing,
sure.
which is kind of, whether you're just a pier rat, just learning from the locals down the local pier and doing whatever you can, and the networking part of it, which is huge, particularly if you want to, depending on how heavily you want to get involved in the industry, or it's just you just want to make it your hobby. I worry about it a little bit. Like I feel like it's kind of getting a bit we were sort of saying it's almost getting your hands dirty and really getting in there and is almost a bit redundant now because you can find everything you need at a click of a button online or whatever it is, which, don't get me wrong, is good in its own way as well, but I feel like it takes out a little bit of the grunt work, the grit work of the grassroots.
Well, I think the important thing there that you said, Kurt, was that Next Gen Fishing program was providing a pathway into the industry. Because I think now you have a look around at what's happening and there isn't that pathway. Because all of those little bits and pieces, all the little things that you would take to potentially get into the industry have now become very single-minded. You either go and work in a tackle shop or you try the content creation thing, which isn't really... It's not really giving you the pathway to the industry. It's just putting you in front of the end consumer. And this was... It's a really insane conversation. It's a really interesting conversation. And I, Luke, you and I have had this numerous times off air, and I've had it with a few store owners here in Victoria as well. How do we grow the industry? Because it seems to be really quite divided at the moment. You've got the tackle stores and the I guess the general consumer. You've got that sort of part of the industry which is sort of bubbling away in the background, and that's awesome. And then you've kind of got this other weird space where the media thing seems completely disconnected from the actual on-the-ground grassroots part of the industry, as you got all these content creators and YouTubers and podcasters like what we're doing here, which is great. But they don't really connect that well.
Yeah.
And there doesn't really seem to be a pathway, depending on what you want to get into in this industry, whether it is retail, wholesale, whether it's manufacturing and even just the designing process of the product like you, Kurt, at Halco. Unless you stumble across those jobs.
Yeah, how do you do it?
There's not really a pathway to find your way into it. It's one thing that's missing at the moment. Yeah, and it's interesting that it was there when it's how you found your way in it.
Yeah, well, I think we've lost from my perspective, we've lost the fishing club thing a bit. Like I'll speak for my generation. Like we've actually seen now.
Back in my day.
But I say that, but the context of that comment is my dad always talks about. He was part of a club called the West Coast Sports Fishing Club in the, I think it was like early 80s to mid 90s, and they would go on trips and stuff together, and all his fishing mates and all his stories and memories, they're all rooted in this West Coast Sports Fishing Club, and he's still great mates with a lot of the guys that he met there now. And put Next Gen aside, I think like my mates and stuff that love fishing, we don't have that kind of like genuine social like outlet to go. Like if you loved fishing but none of your mates did and your parents didn't know, like what do you do?
Do you think the modern fishing club is WhatsApp?
Well, in a way it is.
Well, it's Facebook,
and
Instagram,
it is,
and it's weird because I think you're spot on, Eka. Because Luke, you and I it was done by the time even when we were. This sounds real weird, but Kurt's age. It was gone. It was gone as well. So you're right, because you even have a look at some of the fishing clubs that are still functioning. They're struggling to get younger members. They just are. Yeah. But I think the big thing that we don't speak about was the camaraderie, like what your old man went through, Kurt. Even just on whether it was monthly or whether it was weekly, or even if it was even outside of the meeting times, they'd all be at the fishing club, sitting down, having a beer and watching the footy, or just talking shit about fishing, or having their own little. It's gone because it's all online based, and I get it, but it's probably not ideal.
Yeah, we've sort of had a kind of resurgence in the last probably 12 months with Perth Game Fishing Club, off the back of a few young guys, two of which are ex-Next Gen fishing guys who have started really getting into the tournament fishing, and so joined the Game Fishing Club here in Perth, and which that club went down the same path as all the others in struggling to get new members and young people and et cetera, et cetera. But we've sort of seen a bit of the resurgence there, and like there's, you could go to the AGM at the Perth Game Fishing Club in a couple of months' time, and there'll be 20 young blokes my age, all really keen, which is really cool. Like it's, I don't know whether that's going to be sustainable or whatever. But it's given me a little bit of hope in that regard.
Well, what did they do to turn it around? Because I think it is sustainable if they were able to. Because there's a couple of clubs down here that are functioning and doing quite well. One is a game fishing club, and the other's just a local club. And these are just the ones that I know of around the area that I live down here. So it's kind of there. But how did that resurgence take place?
I don't know I don't think it was really.
Did a couple of young blokes go, you know what, we're going to get into whether it's presidency, treasurer, all the old, we're just going to take that by the balls, we're going to go and do it, and then we just start creating fun, generating those comps and promoting it from within?
Yeah, there was a bit of a changing of guard. I mean, I'm not completely in on the. I'm a member, but I'm not like completely involved in the ins and outs. But from an outside perspective, there was a bit of a changing of the guard from a management point of view, and just a whole bunch of young guys, like already a core group of mates that have all joined. So they kind of just speed ran that sort of young social.
They bring the vibe with them.
Yeah,
really,
exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
It wasn't like 20 sort of separate people all trying to become a club. There was a whole bunch of groups of mates that all just came in, and it's unreal. Like I hope it keeps going, and I hope that other fishing clubs and stuff can try and do a similar thing, because it is really cool, and one thing that I think we've missed so far.
Would you go, Ads, if there was a similar sort of setup to that, would you go and attend? Being honest.
Well, being honest, if it was with a group of mates and we're all keen, then I probably would.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It's an interesting concept, because Kurt, Luke and I, a little while ago on this pod, we come up with a whole scenario on how we bring back the fishing club.
Yeah, right.
And we went down the path of making it like the NBA, like basketball. So we had like different events set up where you would recruit from within your club. You'd put together a team.
Yeah, right.
And you'd have your snapper specialists, and then you might have your trout specialists, and they'd all compete for points against other clubs.
Yeah, see,
and then we
unreal.
went way down the rabbit hole. It had like trade periods, and there's like dudes like trading people. It was freaking awesome.
Yeah, it got gnarly.
I've been traded to Geraldton District offshore.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. But
I'm off.
You've been recruited by the game league of the tournament scene. So within that fishing club, they've identified you and they've poached you out, and they've sort of offered a couple of draft picks and stuff for down the future to get you over.
But I love that though. That's just a modern twist on what
vibe
wouldn't happen before.
It's just vibe.
Yeah.
Because I think there's something, like, I do think there's still that desire to, that competitiveness that, even if it's just snapper, like, obviously, when I say just snapper, like, it's a pretty special species here in Victoria, but even if it was a comp just based around that, and look, there's been comps come and go, and there's still the clubs might have their own thing, but I reckon when you set it off, and I don't want to get wound up again about it, Ads, but when you set it off and you've got like it's Geraldton versus Perth or whatever it is, and it's like head to head, and it's like
I love that.
I want to fucking perform.
Yeah.
I don't want to lose to these guys.
It used to happen. There was clubs down here that would compete against each other in surf fishing competitions, and then they'd do the same, and they'd travel to Gippsland and do a bit of brim stuff. I think that's maybe where you can get some, I guess, a larger audience to, because all the comps happening at the moment are all inter-club.
Yeah.
So they're essentially only getting themselves sort of worked up and into it. If you could work in a bit of club against club, for nothing too crazy. I mean, we went silly with it, Luke, but even just for bragging rights where you meet up at the clubs afterwards and have a beer and catch up. But
exactly,
having the clubs competing against each other in some format would help with a greater community getting involved.
Yeah, for sure.
I guarantee that the brands, like whether it be Rapala, whether it be Halco, Shimano, would get involved in that stuff, and they'd support this sort of stuff too, which would add to a bit of, add to it and make people want to get involved.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we even got to the point where we were like, the best of each state would face off at some point in some
awesome.
like a national competition.
Yeah, there'd be like home field advantage where there's like over. Like, it'd be awesome.
Like, oh fuck, we're in WA next week. Got your passports, boys? Nah.
No, I love that though. That's unreal.
It'd be cool.
And from a brand perspective, like if I put that hat on for a second, anything proactive and interesting and exciting. Like I don't rate and we get a lot of emails at Halco from clubs and stuff, and it's like, we're doing this competition, there's 12 boats, it's the same 12 boats as it's been for the last 15 years, can we have this many lures to put in, one in each bag and a sticker? And it's like, that's great, and we obviously have a kind of a community kind of responsibility to support that sort of stuff, and we do a lot of it, but the difference between that and then coming to us and being like, we're doing this and it's exciting and people are who wouldn't have been involved otherwise are going to get involved. From a brand perspective, it'll gather so much more support.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think, from there it went to the Olympic Games, Kurt. So,
well,
I
love it.
We took it there. I wanted to just go back for a sec because it's freakishly, and Ads, I don't know if you picked up on it, it's crazy your entry into, I suppose, the industry or into where you are now is so freakishly similar to both Adam and myself in that early on got in the tackle store, bagged the pippies for a living for a while.
Yeah.
And then sort of started the writing for the magazine thing, which,
right.
I think is just sort of part and parcel of it. And then something you didn't mention is we all got involved in radio.
Yeah.
because you kind of did you did a big WA station, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a big
I
deal.
wouldn't use the word big, but like a serious one. Like it wasn't some. It's a proper commercial radio station. It's not like a little community one or whatever. And the fishing show that I took over, Carl Langdon did for like 20 years. So like same time slot every week for 20 years. So it had a lot of support. So it was pretty cool to I'm not doing it anymore, but it was pretty cool to do it for that year and get the experience in radio. And like that fishing show was a big deal to a lot of people, which I didn't quite know when I walked into it. Because it's sort of hard to, coming from someone who doesn't listen to a lot of radio, it was hard for me to sort of gauge what kind of engagement or community engagement that show had until I was doing it and people are calling in or people would say,
I was going to say,
I heard you on the radio.
Thing?
Yeah, it was, yeah.
Oh,
but,
yes.
people that I'd never even would have had a conversation like that with before going, I heard you on the radio or whatever. And I was like, yeah, wow, this people do actually listen. Otherwise, because at the start it felt like it was just me sitting in a dark room at 5 o'clock in the morning talking to myself. So
it's come along.
Also, did you host it solo?
I did, yeah.
That's hectic.
Dude,
Yeah.
that's insane.
Yeah, so it was 5 a.m. to 6 a.m. on a Saturday morning. Talk back and just solo. So just talk.
That's
with just a voice in the cans.
Yeah.
Wrap it up.
And
Wrap it up, Kurt.
Yeah.
I don't even reckon there would have been that. I could have just kept going, but
You're 15 seconds over.
Yeah.
15 seconds
it
over.
was cool.
Wrap
But
it up.
and like I got thrown in the deep end a little bit because
A little bit.
Yeah, well,
hosting a popular fishing show solo
Yeah.
at 5 a.m. on a Saturday morning
Yeah.
when you're essentially a teenager, early 20s.
Nah, this is only recently. I was 23 when I started it. So
Yeah, still, exactly. The last thing you want to be doing
But
at 23 years old is be up
I
at
know,
5 a.m.
which
like
is
4:30 to get to the studio by 5.
yeah, consequently, why I'm not still doing it now. But,
No, work got too busy.
but no, it was cool. And on the first weekend I did it, like I went in and did one morning with Carl just to sort of see how it all worked. And then he was like, all right, you're on air tomorrow. And I did the Sunday show the next day on my own. So I just had to sink or swim really. And it was cool. It was, I think had I not been shoved into it so hard like that, I may have stressed out about it a bit more. Like I didn't even have a chance to overthink it. I was just like, bang, you're on air and find a way. It was cool.
It's a bizarre feeling. And we've spoken about this fairly recently on the show too, Ads, when I suppose we're doing a bit of a comparison with, the live radio thing, which comes in all forms of stress and anxiety, and just because you're just trying to have a cool conversation, and like could be like the three of us like this and really getting into it, and then you just get that voice in your ear.
Ad break, wrap it up.
Wrap it up. You got 7 seconds, and you fucking had 7 seconds.
7 seconds.
They would just hit the button. But on the flip side, there was the awkward conversations that the other people on the other end of the line, like if you were getting a report from someone, they either couldn't speak or they couldn't shut up. And
Yeah.
that would be a cut off mid-sentence.
Yeah, there was some interesting ones, especially at 5 o'clock in the morning. Like,
Yeah, I was going to say you
talk
think
back
it was
on a Saturday.
so good. Yeah.
Yeah, that would have been interesting.
I remember one, they stitched me up and what was cool about that was the desk operator was my age, and the producer, Rachel, she's only 2 years older than us. So, and it was just the three of us in there sort of making it up as we went along.
That's cool.
Yeah, so it was pretty cool. And they stitched me up one morning. Like, they've got recurring callers, they'll write notes against their name. Like,
Yeah,
and this,
I remember
and
that.
I hadn't quite worked out like where to look because there's so much stuff going on. But one rang through and they're all giggling a bit, and they put him through, and he was just this crusty old pissed bloke. And I'm struggling so bad, and they're all behind the glass just laughing at me, struggling through this. And then I see on the screen on his name, it says, there's in brackets, usually drunk, don't answer.
Oh, that's awesome.
But they just ran it through, put me through and let him
It's
go.
like, it's a slow morning, let's do it.
Yeah, that's right. Let's spice it up a bit.
Yeah, so I had that as well. So if I could get through that, then most were fine.
Yeah.
So no, it was
That's
good fun.
It's a crazy. I don't know if that still exists. Like, I mean, fishing radio here. Am I right in saying it doesn't exist anymore? Ads at all?
Yeah, I don't. If there is any at all, I don't know where they are. There might be some regional ones around, but as far as like a mainstream,
Yeah, right.
I don't think there's much.
Is
around.
that similar there, or is that show still going?
Show's still going. It's
okay.
yeah, it's just it's one of those ones that they'll probably, I don't know, they'll just keep it ticking over forever. I'd say.
I think there's always a bit of a demand for a bit of just a general. I mean, you did it heaps longer than I did, Ads, with just that last show you did, and it was more or less just a reports based show. That
and
kept
it was. They were awesome for their time, and even going back and doing the 3RW thing. What was interesting there, the show only ended because basically the company that owned 3RW was sold off to another, from memory, to another company in Sydney, and they just didn't have room for a Melbourne-based fishing show. So it kind of, there's a heap of different things, but Luke and I, we speak about this all the time, but I just don't know, like, how many people still listen to the radio? Like, in all honesty,
Yeah.
Are you going to be reaching, and, you know, do people really want to listen to a reports-based thing? I don't know. I don't know whether my tastes have changed in it. I don't know whether being around fishing all the time where you can keep up to date with reports a little bit easier, but I don't know. It's kind of like the form that doesn't die.
Yeah.
You don't need it. You don't need it. Like, you almost in a way sort of relied on that to go, oh, okay, the BEM's fishing well for brim.
Yeah,
Cool.
yeah.
It's like that little clip of the newspaper.
Yeah,
that
that's
was,
right. Yeah,
you
that's
know,
the newspaper report.
under the comics,
Yeah.
and you go, oh shit, okay, there's salmon on the beach there.
Yeah.
Like, it's been written 12 months ago.
Yeah.
They've just copied and pasted it.
I used to write. I did some newspaper reports for a while, and I remember one time I wrote, and I
You
used
just make it up.
Yeah, well, so I'd be lying if I said.
okay.
I'd be lying.
Safe space.
I'd be lying if I said that every single thing I said was I had like learnt from a reliable source. There was not that I ever would have said something that would have been wrong, like, but especially when you do it on one Saturday and then the next Saturday they're like, now what? And I'm like, well, all the same stuff, but
Yeah, but this is sort of the beauty of what we do, and this is why it's so good, because even in the hottest bite, there'll be someone that catches fuck all. So even if whatever report you give, whatever, as long as you're within the season of which the species are going to go, like we know down here, and you know, if you go fishing at 18 metres off Carrum in November, there's every chance of catching a snapper. I can tell you that now, and it's not even November.
I remember.
So
my
it is a bit of a rinse and repeat, though.
I wrote one. My grandfather reads them like religiously, but I wasn't the main writer. I was just filling in because the guy that does it was away, so it didn't have my name against it or anything. It was just the report. My granddad comes up to me. He's like, 3 days later, he goes, "I read in the paper that squid jigs, white squid jigs with red eyes are the go-to. You got to get some." And I thought, I fucking wrote that, and not only did I write it, I made it up. So that was pretty good.
I love it.
Yeah, but yeah,
I remember the monthly ones that we used to write was like, you wish you could just write see previous month.
It is. Which I guess is probably why a bit of that stuff has tapered off in its audience a bit, because it does all get a little bit much the same sometimes, but especially when if you're a part of 6 different Facebook groups, like you're getting a live feed of what's getting caught anyway. Day. So it's I don't know. I think it'll still have its place for a long time, that sort of stuff. But whether it's at the cutting edge anymore, probably not.
It's just a changing landscape, and it'll change again. Like there'll be a point where people go podcasts.
Yeah.
What the fuck? What does anyone need that
for sure?
But it's all part of it. It's all good fun. We just do what we can. I want to chat to you, Kurt, about some of what you do just in your downtime as far as fishing goes, mate. Because again, we've touched on you live in a pretty special part of the world, that's for sure. And it was cool to spend time with you and see that you don't seem like you've gotten over it or bored of it or sick of it. It's kind of still gets you excited.
Yeah.
There's a few giggling moments that you just have, and I love that sort of stuff. But what is it for you? Like, what are you doing on your days off as far as fishing goes? If you've got a couple of days to spare.
Yeah, look, I'm lucky. I get to do a lot of fishing through work as well, so that scratches a lot of the itch. But at the same time, there's also nothing like, catching it on your own boat's always going to be better than on someone else. When I go and catch mackerel on Ben's 50-footer somewhere, everyone's like, "Oh, yeah, nice job." Go and catch them yourself. So I do still do a bit. My parents have got a holiday house in Jurien Bay, which they've had since I was really little. So Jurien's one town before Geraldton, or there's Geraldton, Dongra, Jurien. So it's about a 2-hour, 45-minute drive from Perth.
Right.
And the fishing there is really, really good. Like, to be only a couple of 100 Ks from a metro region, it's really good fishing. Both pelagic action and bottom fishing, which is probably not more renowned for. But yeah, so I'll if the weather's good, like rather than fishing off Perth, I'll drive up the night before and fish Jurien a lot of the time. So yeah, on weekends or whenever in between.
And what is it? And this might sound dumb. It honestly is a million miles apart from even just the East Coast, even on a similar line across the country sort of thing. It's just such a different fishery and different landscape. Is that blue water, that pelagic fishery, and even that demersal fishery pretty consistent right up the coast? Like, is it really different at Jurien Bay, for example, than it is to Perth, which is only a couple 100 K, as you say?
No, it's pretty similar. That if we went and had a bull tear of a weekend at Jurien, you go, oh, this is pretty similar to the Abrolhos. You don't get those northern species like trout and that sort of stuff. But this season at Jurien, in probably six weekends or so, we've got lots of dolphin fish, wahoo. I've got a blue marlin there. Yellowfin tuna. So there's all that stuff out wide, and then jewfish, bald-shin groper, lots of snapper, in anywhere from sort of 50 into sort of a couple of meters of water. So it is pretty similar, and similar to Perth. Perth fish is a bit harder just because of the fishing pressure. But yeah, it is all pretty similar. Like, the Abrolhos is like that one unique spot, because you go north of there again and you're in northern species territory. You don't get the jewfish and the pink snapper so much. And
that was a bit of a spin out, getting coral trout and snapper basically on the same reef, on the same bommy or whatever. That's pretty unique.
So those two exist together for probably another couple of 100 Ks, and then the snapper disappear and it's trout. But that middle period is pretty cool. It's the jewfish that are the southern one that makes that so special. Like the snapper up to Shark Bay, you'll get lots and lots of pink snapper. But the jewfish, sort of, the Abrolhos is kind of like that sort of last known line where they live.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Have they always been an iconic species of WA? Because I feel as though there's something that's become quite popular fairly recently, I guess, especially since we've seen the introduction of like slow pitch jigging and micro jigging, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Or have the Jewies been just one of the iconic bottom fish of WA forever? They've
always been the go-to. But I think once you could start sports fishing for them, it blew up even more so. Like a lot of that stuff. But and I think there was, and the fisheries management stuff here is strict and all over the place now. But it wasn't a long time ago, and the Jewies got absolutely hammered. So also there was kind of a rarity sort of thing that came into it. for a point there as well. Like they're not that easy to catch either. So yeah, but the slow pitch jigging stuff definitely blew them up because they're such a cool sports fish to chase on sort of 30-pound bottom gear as well.
It's the one I couldn't tick off, ads. So I'm going to have to. I'll be back. I'll be back.
And I'll be coming with you. I'll give you.
Yeah. I'll be doing a deep drop trip for sure. But it was interesting though. Like we had, we had a pretty cool couple of days jigging, for example, and trout and Samson fish were around, and obviously snapper and bits and pieces. But there were two jewfish in particular caught that were. So I think it's fair to say they were big.
Yeah, they're good ones.
From, like even for you guys, and it was a different buckle of a rod.
Yeah.
When you saw one of them hook up, I think I looked around at Tim, who's also one of the Halco guys, and he just spun the head around, and the minute he hooked up, went Dewey. Yep. Just like
it is like that.
Fuck.
Yeah. No, they're pretty cool fish, and anything sort of 12 kilos plus.
Just about to ask, what's a banger of Dewey?
A 10 kilo one is a good one. Like you're happy with that. 10 to 15's like a really good fish, and 15 plus is massive. 20 kilos used to be like the 40 centimeter brim, but there's not a lot of them around now. Like I can't remember the last time I saw someone get a 20 kilo one. My dad got one 19.89 one day, which that's the biggest one I've ever seen. It was absolutely massive. I've never caught one over sort of 16-ish. But yeah, people fish for a long time and never get one over 12 kilos. So, they're cool fish.
It's a cool looking fish, man. Like just a wild looking fish.
Yeah, big head. And that tail, like you can just tell from those, like Tim said straight away, like just that lunging tail beat back down to the bottom is just so like there's nothing else like it. So you can just tell straight away.
That's nuts.
Yeah.
There is something else that you do that Adam and I have spoken about in the past. We both opt out of, but I did do it briefly, and that you do a bit of free diving,
a little bit,
and stuff like that.
Yep.
I hopped in the water ads a couple of times with Kurt. I was very close to Kurt at all times. Mate, do you know what I discovered? I can't fucking hold my breath.
Yeah, because do you know why? It's called anxiety. WA are known for fucking sharks everywhere.
And do you know these pricks were, while we're in the water, telling us all these stories, horrific stories. And I'm like, guys, pick your time and place. Like, I'm already shitting myself right now.
Yeah.
You did pretty well. Now, not gonna lie, that day we were in the water getting the crays, like that was about as gross as I've ever seen that spot. Like it was really stirred up and
it had everything.
Yeah, all the markers.
Everything you would think don't go in the water. Like, and because one of the things that I'll never forget about the trip at the Abrolhos with these guys was the couple of spots we jumped in the water, and was the clarity of the water is just ridiculous. Yeah. Like it's visibility for fucking ever, like unbelievable. But this particular spot, I think it was pretty early in the morning. It was overcast as shit. Yeah. Got in the water and couldn't see a metre in front of you. Like everything about it makes you go, get the fuck out of the water. What are you doing? Yeah. And I'm just like, Curtis said it's fine.
And it was fine.
It was, but I think Ben did drop as we got back on the boat. There was a couple of tiger sharks up the front. Yeah. I'm like, I don't even care if you're lying. I'm not going back in the water again.
And there always is there, but I don't know.
See?
But I think it's a bit of exposure therapy as well. Like once you see a couple in the water as well. Like I haven't done a lot of free diving. I've done a bit, and I only ever really do it in those sorts of shallow water, like tropical situations. So like if you told me to go and do that at Margaret River or somewhere like that, you couldn't pay me. There's no amount of money in the world that'll make me do that there. But yeah, up there, I don't know. We've done a little bit of it, and once you see a fair few in the water, and most of the time it's fine. So you just
most of the time, it's fine.
Yeah.
But I gotta say though, like apart from that particular morning, like every other time we got in, there's something about it that makes you. I don't know whether you forget about everything like that, but I was so blown away by everything else that you're looking at that. Yeah, I could have been bitten in half and I wouldn't have even seen it coming. But it's a pretty special place to get in the water. And like when the water's 25.5 degrees, it's not half bad.
Bath.
What's the bay here at the moment? 12?
12, yeah.
Oh, that's
12.
gross. That's so gross.
And it'll get colder too.
Yeah, that's nuts.
But not just that, the amount, like what a healthy cray fishery.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
Oh, that wasn't it. You know, what you saw from that, you know, sort of area, that was probably, with you in the water, that was probably the least amount of crays I've ever seen there in my life. I remember I've seen that, and it probably the murky stirred upness is going to make them tuck in a bit more. But yeah, I remember days there where you're like trying to get as many as you can in one breath. I've seen Ben get 4 in one breath because they're just like walking across the sand, or there'll be a hole and there's so many packed in that the ones on top are just sitting on top and you just go and pick them up.
It's nuts.
Yeah, it is crazy.
It's nuts.
Yeah.
But the ability to, you know, sort of skipper on one of the mornings goes, we're going to need some crays for dinner, and you can just go, okay.
Yeah, I'll just go get some.
Give us 35 seconds. Hang on.
Yeah. No, it is cool like that. Like, we probably take that for granted a little bit there, like how we can just pull up and be like, have no food for dinner and be like, oh, let's just get a boiled chin and 2 crays, and you know, 30 minutes later you're eating it.
I'm going to put you on the spot because I was telling Ads a bit about I mentioned bald chin groper a bit, and it wasn't a fish that I even had thought about prior to heading over there and fishing, but like a beautiful eating fish. Putting you on the spot, rank your top 3 eating fish from WA.
Hard to go past bald chin groper. I think if you did a survey of people, coral trout would beat it.
Which we did do a survey, but I don't know how many people were tuning in. There were a few people in WA that were getting on board on Instagram, but continue.
So I think coral trout, as a general rule, for most people, is rated higher because it's a little bit blander. It's not quite as fishy. It's got like that chickeny sort of vibe to it. But I like fishy fish, so I'm going to go bald chin groper. Mangrove jack is up there for me. I don't get to eat a lot of them, but when I do, I'm in a part of the world where we can catch them. I love keeping a mangrove jack, and probably coral trout.
This is what we're about. We're about.
Coral trout, ranking cod, and like jewfish are probably, you could put all them in there, and I wouldn't be disappointed. But one that I really rate is wahoo, which doesn't really get the rap that I think it deserves in terms of eating fish.
You don't hear much about wahoo.
No.
You don't? Well, I don't even think you hear much about mangrove jack
as
an eating fish.
No,
you hear of them always as sport fish.
Yeah. No, mangrove jack are beautiful. But yeah, wahoo's like, it's unique. I think potentially people might just assume it's exactly the same as mackerel because they're so similar. And when you fillet them, they're quite similar as well. Both are really soft flesh. But wahoo's just got this like almost broadbill swordfish style, like steak kind of dense flesh, and I reckon it's unreal. Yeah, so wahoo. Wahoo would be in my top 5.
I brought up wahoo a couple of weeks ago. We were talking about top 5 cool looking fish, and I reckon they're an underrated looking fish as well. Just for, I don't know, do they lose their sort of those bands after they out of the water for a little bit, or because some of the photos you've sent through the last couple of weeks, they're a wicked looking fish.
They're unreal. Like the wahoo fishing that we had last week was like, it would be as good as you could ever ask for anywhere. Like, you know, it would rival some of that like Fiji shit. It was nuts. You know, we were filming for a new product, and so in the filming process, you're not catching anywhere near as many fish as you would if you were just going to catch them. You know, we're trolling, we're only running one lure at a time, and then we're spending a heap amount of time, you know, with the fish at the boat, filming it underwater, and you know, put the drone in the air and do this. So you spend a lot of time on one fish, so you kind of you minimize the amount of time you're actually catching lots of fish. And I still think in like a day and a half wahoo fishing, we got like probably 25 or 30 wahoo up to 30 kilo. And the smallest one we got would have been like 15.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So it was unbelievable. And they're not easy to get to in WA. Like that area.
I think they're easy to get anywhere in the world. Yeah. Like they're just
Are they seasonal where you are there, Kurt? Are they seasonal? Or could you go, are they just remote?
Yeah.
It's just rare as bad.
Yeah, they're just, the one spot that like, I think if I told anyone, Ben would shoot me.
But are they... So are they?
You don't have to say.
Are they remote, or is it just you've got to know they're accessible, but you've got to know where to go to get them.
You can go to Exmouth and troll where you would troll for tuna and mackerel and get wahoo, but you wouldn't be able to like specifically target wahoo. Like you'll get the odd one, and you get the odd one, in the inshore marlin fishery at Exmouth there or whatever. Like you can get them for sure, but this area that Ben found a long time ago is like concentrated wahoo, which is what's sort of strange about it. We got. Out of the 30-odd fish, we got like 2 Spanish mackerel, 2 yellowfin tuna, and the rest are all big wahoo. So you just don't really get that often. But mind you, like that area is 50 nautical miles one way from any of the closest towns, and there's nowhere to stay out there. So it's protected by its by its distance. Like but it's pretty cool.
I mean, Is WA the greatest place you've ever heard of, Adam? Just having these conversations.
but even for diversity of species, like just the fact that there is a place in Australia that exists where you can catch snapper and coral trout in the same drop.
Yeah.
That's pretty special. Yeah. And it doesn't get spoken about at all. Like you don't hear of a place like that over here.
And even you get that sort of that mid-north coast of New South Wales where you get a bit, that southernmost point where you might get Spanish mackerel and that sort of thing, but not some of those reef species like that. It's pretty wild. It's pretty cool.
But from you guys, like, what do you hear about WA? Like, what before you came over, what are you expecting?
It's a great question. It's actually a really interesting question, and I was thinking about this recently
because we get a lot of East Coast media, and it seems to me like you get a lot of kingfish and snapper and King George whiting, and and like big flathead and mulloway or whatever. But I don't know. I'd be interested.
I don't want to speak for everyone or even you, Adam, but that's the stuff that even you've just said tonight. We don't get that sort of information really at all. So look, there's probably a couple of elements to it. One might be the fact that it's not overly accessible to the average trailer boat angler. Yeah. Some of the stuff like you're talking about, 50 nautical mile, like for example. But whereas it's probably a highly caught fish is a flathead or a snapper or a whiting, so it's kind of just everywhere and saturated, and it's hugely popular from the entry level beginner right up to whatever level you're at. But I just don't know if we really get. I remember years ago hearing about the Samson fishery, which was just like it was on my list, and then I think the sharks fucking killed that. And then obviously, like Ad said before, jewfish have always been something.
Do you know the other thing that struck me as interesting over there? I remember because Kurt, I used to work with Tackle World as well down here.
Yep.
And Hal Harvey over your way getting stuck into these monstrous tailor on top water.
Oh yeah.
I don't think that was something that ever became insanely mainstream over here, but it's something that was sort of like they're actually targeting tailor, but doing it in the coolest possible way. Like they're legitimately like proper, almost game fishing / hardcore sports fishing for these massive tailor, and they were huge.
Yeah. I've done that, and we've caught those.
It looks pretty sick.
Yeah. So Shark Bay is one of those areas where we had to crack at them the other day, but didn't find any big ones. But where you can go and target like. The biggest I've seen, we never really measured them, which I guess we should, but if there wasn't one caught over a meter, I'd eat my hat. Like
a tailor.
Yeah.
That's
like they're huge.
A tailor.
But that was, so to your question before, like even just my expectations, that was one I'd never even considered, like when they were talking about tailor and we had a bit of a crack one morning, but I just like, really? And then some of the photos that they pulling out, like these meter long tailor, it's like,
See, that's awesome because a fish that you would think, well, I'm not going to travel halfway across the country to target a tailor, but I would do that.
Yeah,
unless it's a meter.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, there's we've had that tailor fishing at Shark Bay where you like sight cast like 700 to meter tailor, and they're just like cruising along, and you see them light up blue, and just cast at them, and they'll just turn and eat a stick bait off the top. Like, it's unreal.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
See, that's
fun.
insane.
Yeah.
But it is an interesting question where you bring up what we think of Western Australia, because the Samsons was one thing that grabbed me early on.
Yep.
But that's essentially, is that even still there in any capacity?
It is not so much how it was. That was
but more as a localized thing.
That was cool because it was a big, hard pulling sports fish that you could go and target specifically on jigs off Perth, and the local charter guys here just really pushed that as a sports fishery. And like, there's not really anything else in the metro region that you could go and target like that.
Right.
And, you know, you still get lots of big Samson fish here, but it's just not quite as those areas where they did do that deep water jigging is you can't really do it anymore. But like, you know, you could if you spent a week doing it, you'd get one that's 30 kilos. So it was that was pretty cool. But yeah, it's not like the Samson fish have vanished. Like in Jurien, we have, and at the Abrolhos, like there's plenty of spots where you can go and target big Samson fish. I think that was just because it was quite a unique fishery in Perth that people could go and do. And also it's easy for charters to go and do. Like, you can't necessarily take a charter boat out with 15 people and all cast stick baits at the fads, because you'll just end up in absolute mayhem. But if you're all jigging for Samson fish, then it would work. But yeah, that one sort of tapered off a bit since the sharks have got so bad there, which is a shame. But yeah, I don't know. There's a whole heap of those other little weird fisheries that we have.
Well, the other one that gets plenty of airtime, and it's probably bigger further south, is the Australian salmon fishery.
Yep.
And that's kind of, I suppose, pretty well known over this side of the. And again, they're big. Everything's just fucking big.
Because you guys have got like one of the biggest sort of marlin game fishing comps in the country.
Yeah,
as well.
GameX.
I can't remember GameX.
Yeah.
I remember.
Yes.
Hearing about that too. That's still going?
Yeah, it's huge. So salmon on the south coast is unreal. It is really cool. I did a filming day a couple of weeks ago. I can't remember if it was before or after the Abrolhos, but I think it was after.
Come on, mate.
But we did, but we did a day salmon fishing, and like, it was one of the best salmon fishing days I've ever had. But they're such a cool fish. Like, they pack attack lures, eat them on the surface. Like, I'll send you guys some of the surface water, like the top water bites that we filmed, and we made an effort to try and like get a long lens and get a really slow mo like surface eat, which we managed to do, which is pretty cool. But yeah, like that as a kind of sports fishery that anyone can do, that stuff's nuts, because it's, and like, we're in the boat, but it's so much fun just like running along the beach, chasing the schools and you know, belting stick baits out at them and stuff.
And I think the idea that anyone can do it, so you don't need a boat, which is really appealing to anyone, really.
It's unreal. Like it, and you know, most people fish for them off the shore. Like we were in the boat chasing this school at Dunsborough, and like, people are pelting lures at us because they're scaring the salmon away, which is fair enough. But that is a really cool one, and they're big. You know, they're 4, 5, 6 kilo. So, and they fight really hard. That jump.
We could move the deep drop headquarters over.
Piece of piss.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Piece of piss.
Yeah.
Right. And then
we'll work on that.
Exmouth is.
No, stop talking.
This one will do it. This one will do it. Yeah. Exmouth is unreal. Like, I was lucky enough to do like a family holiday there every year from when I was like 8 to, you know, till after I left school. And I would just fish for a week straight. Exmouth is nuts. And it's like the black marlin fishery there is, you know, you 4 mile, you go out the launch on the west side and go out the heads, or, you know, out the back of the reef, and put the lures out the second you drive out the channel markers. And I caught a sailfish 200 meters from the opening of the channel. Like, you literally just put the gear out and start trolling for that sails.
That's
and
wicked.
And little blacks.
Well, Exmouth is one that is.
Yeah, it's not
like that's on the radar here. Like, everyone knows it.
Because I remember even Worstling saying if he could just pick one place in Australia to go fishing, Exmouth is it. If you could only fish one more place, easy. It's Exmouth.
Yeah.
If you don't like fishing, there's probably nothing else to do. But as a fisho, just go to X-Men.
It's unreal. Yeah, because I mean, you got the whole west side with you can catch 600-pound blue marlin, or Eddie Lawler got Australia's first 1,000-pound blue marlin out there a couple of years ago. But then if you want to, if it's howling from the west, you've got the towns on the eastern side of the peninsula. So you've got the whole Gulf there, which is often protected. There's the Muron Islands to the north. There's the Mackerel Islands and Peak Island and stuff. Sort of northeast. So there's just whatever the weather, there's somewhere to go and something to chase. Yeah.
I've got a bit of a curly one for you, just off the top of my head, and I'm not being a smart ass. Is there anything like that Western Australian fishery doesn't have that you think, fuck, if we had that, that would just top it all off? And I know that sounds ridiculous, but, I've had these conversations with some friends in New Zealand, for example, which is a wicked fishery for, obviously, kingfish and marlin and snap. But they're always like, man, if we had some, mackerel or GTs or something, it would just be fucking the ultimate.
Yeah.
But do you ever think about that? Like, I mean, you're probably sport for choice as it is, but is there ever a point where you're like, that would be cool if it was here?
I mean, it's not like if only we had this, because we've got so much to be happy with. But if I can look at stuff and go, I really wish I could have that on my doorstep. Two things come to mind. One is the really big flathead that you guys get. Because I'd love to be able to go in the Swan River and chase big flathead. Like, we can catch lots of flathead, but if the biggest I've ever caught is 50 centimeters, which is a good one. So those big flathead, I always look at that and think that looks really cool. And the other one would be like a really good freshwater, like trout stuff, I reckon. Like, we have a bit, but it's not.
Yeah,
what's the trout fisheries now? Is it like lakes, or is it a river? Are there river systems with trout?
There's both. There's lakes and rivers that are stocked, but it's not like. And some guys who are really clued in about it do catch some unreal fish, but it's pretty few and far between in terms of like a good fishery that you can go and chase really nice trout in or whatever. So, we have some really good redfin fishing.
I've heard that.
Yeah,
actually.
yeah. Some of the
Adam's favourite.
Look at him. We're in, Luke. Let's go.
Yeah.
I love redfin.
Let's go.
Sealed the deal.
Yeah, I would do 2 trips a year chasing redfin. Like, I actually, I do like it. And we had a session on a lake, on a man-made, lake that's only sort of 150 k's from Perth last year, where it was the most unbelievable redfin session I've ever had. We got 10 fish over 40 centimetres and 4 over 45, and the biggest was 49. So it was freakish, and that was unreal fun. It was wicked.
Do you know redfin? We did a poll recently on the Deep Drop Instagram about the top 5 coolest looking fish.
Yeah, right.
And we sort of said we kicked it off with brown trout. We think it probably arguably the best looking fish as far as just purely off looks. We said a striped marlin, like fully lit up striped marlin. What was the third ads that we said? Dolphin fish. Mahi. Again, fully lit up, look wicked. And then we left it open, and one of the ones that ended up making the list based on purely on numbers was redfin.
Yeah, right. Well, I mean, you don't really think about them in that light.
That's the reaction we had.
That's what we were like. We're like, well, yeah,
I guess.
They're cool.
They are cool fish. They're probably a little bit underrated.
Yeah. Do you eat them? Did you eat?
Well, we're not actually allowed to release them.
No.
So I don't know whether that's the same.
Listed. Well, they are listed as noxious in Vic, but they're kind of like they taste good and there's lots of them and they're good to catch. So I don't think because they're not they're not necessarily having a detrimental effect on the environment.
Yeah, right.
Whereas the carp are just eroding all the banks and they're stopping spawning activities of our native species as well. So they're not. They're in the same class as a carp, but not here. If that
do you have carp in WA?
We do, not to the point where it's an issue. Like I know there's.
I'm gonna fucking bring some over. You've got it fucking too good over there. I'm bringing some.
There's a lake near the city that's got them, and like the boys chase them. There's nothing else in there. There's just like long necked tortoises and birds, and people just go there to. Sit in the park and look at the water. But the boys call them mud marlin and go take little cans of corn and use them. So that is actually a bit of fun. But it's not. Yeah, it is. It's not a problem.
If you had impoundments with giant Murray cod, it could be the ultimate state fishery in the world.
There you go. That's a good one.
If it's not already.
Well, we don't have cod or bass here. legally.
Yep.
There are some. There's a golf course not far from here where there's a
you'd
pond
think the
with a
conditions would
monster.
be pretty awesome for both of those species.
There are
warm year round.
Yeah, there's
growth
private
rates would be through
lakes.
the roof.
There's private lakes here with like, I'll send you a photo of the biggest one I've seen. No, it's like it'd be like nearly a meter long. Like they eat ducks off the surface.
Yeah.
So like they're proper ones, and they live and breed here, so it's doable. But yeah, it's just whatever nonsense is the reason that it's not. But
they get funny about natural ranges and things, because we've even had it with certain systems down here. As far as there was a bit of a push not too long ago about stocking some of the residential areas, because a lot of the residential areas going up now, a lot of the new areas are being built with man-made, wetlands and lakes and things in them. A lot of them they wouldn't put cod in because it's outside of their natural range.
Yeah, right.
So that, you know what?
Whatever.
If it's native, it's native. Just put it in.
Yeah. No, that's a good one though to add. Yeah, that would be good.
I've got a couple of just questions that I'm going to fire off at you to finish off. And by the way, thank you so much for coming on Deep Drop.
Yeah, it's
No
been
dramas.
awesome, mate.
It's been awesome
No
having
problems.
you on. But these are a couple of questions that we've asked on the show in previous episodes. So I think you're in the right sort of position to answer some of these. The first one, it's a big one, and it's a fucking crucial one about boating and fishing. You go to boat snack.
No pressure, but there's only one answer.
There's only one answer.
Okay. If it's like off the shelf at Coles,
Yes.
it's barbecue shapes.
Yes!
Is that the one? Yeah. Okay. Cool.
This is
Yeah.
it. That's it.
We didn't even set this up.
That's not set up.
Just saying. Question without notice.
They're the ones.
That is
You couldn't have planned that.
is not. That's not planted.
No, it's,
But we shouldn't be that surprised
No, we
because we
shouldn't be.
throw it out there on Instagram and we get photos from people at Coles and at Woolworths and shit.
yeah,
like,
right.
loading themselves up with barbecue shapes.
Okay, correct.
Or
correct
answer. some hectic sort of anxiety where there's no barbecue. What do I get next? And you go, nothing.
Nothing. Yeah.
Yeah, no, they are a ripper. I
love
Yeah,
that.
they are a ripper.
They are.
If it's like not just something I bought off the shelf, I love cold pizza on the boat.
Ooh, solid.
Like I'll cook pizza.
As in like leftover,
Yeah.
that's
that probably can't. We at my mum and dad's house in Jurien, there's a big pizza oven, so we'd often like cook wood-fired pizzas and then just keep them cold and take them
And
on the
you
boat.
do more. You do too many.
Yeah.
On
Yeah,
purpose.
yeah.
Yeah.
So that is a
nice.
good
That's
one.
good.
But yeah,
That's
I'm on board with barbecue shapes. That they are the go-to.
I love that. That's fucking brilliant. The next one you kind of already answered. I was going to throw to you the idea of sort of a national tournament scene, like state versus state type situation, slash should it be the Olympics? Was going to be part of the question.
Yes.
We've kind of touched on it, but like, do you genuinely think, like, jokes aside, that Australia could have some sort of format where there is like a national tournament scene that is very much, there might be, state-based comps and that, but ultimately they come together. It might be a rolling sort of tournament that Queensland versus New South Wales one round, and Victoria versus WA. Like, do you think that could ever be a thing?
Honestly, I've never thought about it in that kind of light, but I love the idea of teaming up with everyone in your game fishing club or whatever, rather than going against them. I reckon it's an unreal idea. I don't know how you'd make it fair, because
Well, I think
that would be my
tell
issue.
you.
Yeah. we've already hashed this out.
I'll send you the email. It's about 10 pages long. It's fine. No, but if you do, everyone's got their home ground advantage. So the circuit, the season would be making sure that everyone
fishes
has.
everywhere.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
yeah, right.
Yeah, so you've
No,
got your
I like
home
that.
round.
I like
'Cause
that.
Could you imagine the banter and ridicule if you lost on your home base?
Yeah,
On your home.
No, I love that.
Oh, mate, you wouldn't want to lose in WA, Kurt, to Tassie.
Tassie, yeah. See, that's,
yeah, that'd be no good.
If you lost to the Northern Territory or a team from far north Queensland, you go,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
well,
yeah, they got some. Yeah, you got something then, but Tassie.
Victoria or Tassie, mate. If we come over there and knock you off, it's just
That would be
we'd
grim.
letting you. But you know
No,
what I
I
mean.
like
So to be a circuit, so you'd be out of your depth multiple times during the season, but you'd always have an opportunity to fish your home waters and have the upper hand by a mile.
I like
really.
it. I don't really see why that kind of thing has to be restricted to bass, brim, or barra.
Oh no. It could be.
100%.
You could just go the iconic species of each state and base around that, or you could pick a few different styles for each state and try and work it around that. There's heaps of options. I just think
this is where you'd have. Yeah, this is where you'd have like a team of. You might have a dozen team members, but you go, all right,
who's doing what or whatever.
WA have chosen a blue water. It might be mackerel or something. So you go, okay, well, you guys are the strongest in our team for that sort of fishing, so you go and fish that.
You do that round.
Yeah, I like that.
And then you might get like your lighter inshore sports fishing. You might send them over to the bass round in New South Wales because that sort of light tackle.
I rate that. That's good.
Yeah.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah, that is good.
And why stop there?
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
Olympic Games, baby.
Yeah, exactly.
No, I really like it.
I'm not. We could go into that. But we've already taken up all of Kurt's night. Okay, this one is a bit of a trickier one. We spoke about it. I don't know if we landed anywhere. Ads. Oh, I think we might have. What is more important to you, a rod or the reel?
Oh,
and I guess it's case by case. But let's, I don't know, maybe pick a style of fishing that you love to do and think about it.
Oh,
rod or reel?
I'm not a fishing gear nut, so. I probably used to be, but I'm not so much anymore. Like, I don't really buy into the differences. Like, I couldn't even tell you the real main difference, what makes one, on a general basis I can, but, once you start getting into the technicalities of it, my eyes glaze over. But, that is a good question that I've never even really thought about. My head wants to make an argument for the rod, but my gut feel is real. So I think about, you can still catch a fish on a horrible rod, but if your drag's sticky or that is really where you might lose something.
Especially thinking about a lot of those fish that you would come across, which are typically going to
pull string,
going to give you a bit of Now that rod is a really important lever, but I feel like if your reel if you've just got a shit reel, you've got no chance.
Yeah, if it can't, I think I'm going to go reel.
Okay. That's okay. Hey,
there's no wrong answers.
No, unless you said something other than barbecue.
Yeah, correct. Yeah. So you passed, mate. Well done.
And I've only got one more, and I just want just say it. Don't think about it. Fly fishing, yes or no?
Yes. Yes.
Ads, are you okay?
Listen, no one's perfect.
I'm okay with it.
He was always going to get one wrong.
I'm okay with it. Yeah, it's I've never really done it.
That's why. That's why you think
I've never really done it. Like, I've tried to cast. But I don't know. Ben, the owner of Halco, his son has started fly fishing, which is an interesting choice from him, considering his dad owns one of the best hard body lure companies in the world.
Is that a real up yours?
Yeah, I think it is. But he brought his fly outfit on the boat the other day, and we had a bit of a play with it, and I like the idea of it.
He was allowed on the boat. That's nice of everyone.
If it wasn't his son,
do have to
then
say, there's situations, and I think about the trip we did, Kurt, when we were catching dolphin fish off the top, that I thought, it would be cool to see someone cast a fly onto these dollies that were fully lit up, they would have eaten everything. But
I like the idea.
I also would have got annoyed after a while because I would have been just fucking land.
Well, we were saying that about you on 30 pound.
Yeah. We did find these fish pretty aggressive, and Kurt goes, chuck this popper in and hand me a rod. What I didn't realise was a fucking brim rod, basically. So I hooked up in about 3 seconds and went, I'm going to be here for a while.
It
was
fly
good.
fishing. I like the idea of another challenge.
Well,
that's cool, but also only.
But you're way too young for that,
mate. Young and naive.
Do a trick. I tell you what. Let's circle back when you've done a day on the river trying to cast a fly, and I think
probably.
It only took me one attempt, mate, and I've never got back.
Adam's quite vocal about his opinion on fly fishing, but that's okay. You're not banned from. We did do a live show once, and Adam was really, really digging the heels into fly fishing, and then I went, is anyone here into fly fishing? And one guy at the backside. It's like, whoops.
Never heard of him. Never heard from him again.
Oh, that's gold.
Poor bloke. Anyway. Okay, well, there's some insight. I think you've won us over well and truly with the barbecue shakes if you hadn't already, mate. So, well done. Kurt, mate, thank you so much for coming on. It's been an absolute blast. I think we've got our WA spokesperson now, Adam.
Yep.
I think we're going to call you up from
Found
time to
another
time,
regular.
mate.
Yeah,
Yes.
for sure. Thanks for having me.
You could be. Could Curtis be part of the Deep Drop Pro staff?
He's already in.
We don't. We
haven't
have
told him
anyone
yet.
yet. No.
He's already in.
We won't. I mean, we're not going to do it. You're not going to get anything.
You don't have to do
I'd
it.
be honoured. I would be honoured.
We send you a hoodie.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, done. Nah, mate, thank you very much. Appreciate your time. And I think, I hope everyone can. I reckon everyone will listen to this and just go to bed at night dreaming about WA, to be honest.
No dramas, boys. Thanks for having me.
You're a legend.
Good on you,
Thanks, man.
Curtis. Thanks, mate.
Cheers.